Hello everyone and welcome to the Train Sim World February Roadmap Q&A. I'm here joined by myself, obviously, and the wonderful Mr. Matt Pedalston. Sorry, I'm still getting over that blip we had in the countdown. Matt, thank you for joining us tonight. We're here really to talk about the February roadmap, and I say roadmap in a way. We know it's the Direct, the Dovetail Direct, the Spring Edition with all the new lovely announcements. But yeah, we're here to really just kind of go live. We didn't really get a chance to go live earlier in the week. And so we're here tonight to answer some questions as well as answer a few things about the announcements we had in the Dovetail Direct. So, if you're joining us for the first time, as a quick summary, we're just going to talk about all of the things in our announcement. We're not going to dive too deep into that discussion, simply because if you want to see the things from the Dovetail Direct, go check it out. It's on our YouTube channel. You can go to videos and find it there for Train Sim World, or if you go to the live section, you can see the entire event for Train Sim World Classic. You can also see Catan and CTS. So I'll leave that for you to rewatch if you're interested. But for tonight, we're going to just touch on some of them a little bit and start answering some of the community questions that you've raised. But Matt, hello, welcome to the stream. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's yeah, it's a fun time. It's been a really interesting couple of days.
Well, please let us know if there's any audio issues. I feel like I need to say that every stream just in case, but please do. And yeah, so as a rough summary, oh, Philip Baker, sorry about that. We had a bit of pink. I don't know how I don't know how Matt, of all the colors for Discord to go for you, it goes pink. There you go. Right. Yeah, as a rough summary of how this is going to work, we're going to talk about a little bit of the direct, and then we're just going to move into questions. And we're going to touch, again, we're going to talk a little bit about the new announcements. But you've got to kind of work with us here in that some of these announcements are quite far ahead in the future. And so we won't be able to talk a lot about everything, but we'll get onto that shortly. How about we summarize what's happened since our last roadmap? And our last roadmap wasn't in January. It was back all the way in December because we don't really do a January roadmap because there's not much to update on other than just we've had a bunch of turkey or we've opened a bunch of Christmas presents because we have our winter break. But since then, we've released the Centro Class 323 Regional Railways pack. We've released the Bernina line. We've also released the Engineering Express pack. And of course, we've had our wonderful Dovetail Direct since Sunday last week. So we hope you're excited about the announcements. But also in that time, we had the large winter core update go out. And we know that there's been a few subsequent patches to make sure that all platforms have got updates to that patch that we put out. But included within that was also the West Somerset Railway Remastered, which we hope you're enjoying. And we've seen lots of really positive feedback about that. And we'll touch on that later as well. And finally, the Formation Designer for Steam and Epic players. So if you are in open beta, so if you are on Steam or the Epic Games platform, be sure to check out Formation Designer and please give us your feedback through the forums because we're looking to really understand what the feedback is and some of the issues that we currently have with it and iron that out so that players on console can have it hopefully soon. There is still no ETA yet on that, but it's looking positive so far. In fact, actually, some of the feedback we've been gathering has really helped us start refining that. And actually, why don't we just jump the queue a little bit and start with Formation Designer because it is a big topic. And Matt, I'll pass to you on this, but what have we really started seeing with some of the work on Formation already?
It's been really good to see that fundamentally people are having a lot of fun with it. They're doing kind of what we hoped people would do with it. Um, it's kind of gratifying that, or reassuring that I don't think we're seeing any problems that we weren't kind of expecting. So when we put it out there, we could have announced some of the things which were pending and known issues with it. And I think that most of the reports I'm seeing kind of end up falling into one of those categories. So that's good. And we're also making progress actually on the development side of it, pushing some of those things forward as well. So there's lots of feedback. The key thing that I was looking for beyond functional feedback was just specific experiences with the different types of consists and the odd weird things that happen when just it gets used in real life quotes. And yeah, we're seeing getting some good stuff with that. So for example, there's a thread on the forums about some people seeing the trains reporting that they're weighing 0 tons. randomly. The same formation will come up fine later on. So, we're trying to reproduce that issue so we can get logs and find out what's going on. Yeah, it's relatively straightforward stuff like that. Fundamentally, it seems to be doing the job, and we're getting some really good ideas from players about maybe not where it will go next, but maybe where it could go in the future, for example. So it's all good thinking. It's all good discussions.
Yeah, and I mean we've seen. I think the biggest point of question that players have answered, and you've been asking, and I can see some in the chat at the moment, is when will it come to console? And I think again, part of our original reason for having it as an open beta is to open that feedback, start understanding the issues, because we could put it onto console right now, but it might not work the way you want it to. In fact, it might be a really unenjoyable experience that we'd rather you can avoid, so that you can have the full feature when it's properly ironed out and ready.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing we have to consider is that turnaround times on the PC platforms are virtually instant. If we want to put an emergency fix out for something, it can be done very near instantly. Whereas the turnaround times on consoles are a lot longer because they have to go through approvals and so forth. So, given this was the nature of what this was trying to do, we wanted to leave that opportunity open to actually make sure that if anything was going strangely wrong, then we could rapidly resolve that. Now, that doesn't seem to be happening. That seems to be going well. We're going to continue as we are for the time being, get these, the remaining things that we've got on the list knocked off and put into the builds, and then achieve stability on PC, which I'm hoping won't be long. Once we've achieved that stability, then we'll roll out then it'll come out of beta and go on to all platforms. So not too long, I'm hoping, but if you keep an eye on what people are saying on PC, then you'll get an idea of where things are at, and that'll help you understand and make a big song and dance about it when we push it to console.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that we'd rather not commit to an exact date, but promising
No.
news. Hopefully, we'll have something for you shortly, so we'll keep you in a loop and an update on when Formation Designer is releasing to all platforms. So you've got us talking about development so early. I don't know how it's happened, but I did want to do a little bit of a quick refresh on the stuff over the direct. So, if you've already seen it, if you're already excited, brilliant. If you haven't, be sure to check it out in full, but as a quick rundown, let's go through some of the ones. So we started off with something that's already released last week, and it's always worth talking about because it's had amazing positive feedback, and that's the West Somerset Railway Remastering. It was our free upgrade to the West Somerset Railway route that was done primarily by DTG Liam, and I know Reese put a lot of work into this, and I know quite a few other people put a lot of love into this remastering. We've seen some really positive things from this.
Apparently the video is too loud. Alex. It's drowning.
Yep, I can see that now. Sorry everyone. Sorry. Anyway, as I was saying, the West Somerset Remastered, yeah, really fantastic addition. I'm glad you can hear me now. Yeah, it was our free upgrade to this route, and a lot of people poured a lot of love into this remastering. We've had some really positive feedback from this. So that was obviously not really part of the direct, but it was part of the recent patches we've had throughout the last couple of weeks. The first announcement from the direct was, of course, the Overground, London Overground route. And this is the, oh, Matt, you're going to have to remind me of the name.
Gospel Oak to Barking Riverside.
That's it. I knew the Barking Riverside part, but I forgot the Gospel Oak bit. I don't have my fancy titles on these transitions. But yes, this is, of course, work in progress footage, so please keep that in mind. And here you go. You're seeing a little bit of gameplay again. If you want to watch this in full, be sure to go watch our Dovetail Direct, because it's, we talk about it in a fancier way, and there's lovely transitions, and there's a bit more information you can get from there as well. Moving on from London Overground, again, no release date yet, coming soon, is the Bahnstrecke Rosenheim to Salzburg, which again is a fantastic route. You're seeing work in progress footage. And we'll talk a little bit more about a few things for Rosenheim, just a little bit after we've shown this gameplay bit. But as you can see here, we've got a little bit of work in progress gameplay. We do have a few route maps as well, that if you want to watch, go check out our roadmap article so you can properly dive through the graphics we've got for this. But Rosenheim as well was, of course, announced. Moving over to US players, we had San Bernardino. Now, we didn't have any gameplay for this, unfortunately, because it's probably not quite at that level yet. But as you can see here, we've got the Metrolink MP36, just a couple of work in progress screenshots, and it does look really fantastic. Following on from the San Bernardino announcement was Semmeringbahn. Now, I know this one was very anticipated, and we have some really wonderful screenshots for this. The scenery is really fantastic. The mountains are just wonderful. I know that from reading through the discussion threads on the forum, I know there's a lot of love and a lot of excitement and a lot of questions. And we'll get to as many of those as we can. Onto some of the third-party announcements we had. We talked about the Peak Forest class. It looks like this image might be... This is the internal image, of course. So this is the class 104 with the Peak Forest expansion pack. Again, no release date on this yet. And it obviously very work in progress. Logo screenshots provided there by Simtrack Studios. And from Skyhook, we had the Cargo Line Volume 2 announcement as well. I know they've done a bit more of a deep dive on an article they've released from their end. So if you are curious to know more about Cargo Line Volume 2, you can actually check out the Skyhook Games website and find out more. We had a little bit of fun with a teaser for 5 Circle. Now there was a lot of love for 5 Circle. And again, I've been reading the discussion threads. There are still a lot of questions, and we will get to answering those. And again, part of tonight will be a live Q&A, so feel free to put any questions you have in the chat. But we weren't really at a point where we could show any footage or any screenshots yet, but we did have a little fun teaser to bring on 5 Circle. And finally, another one of the bigger announcements of the Direct was the Tadami line. And this is in Japan, and we've not been to Japan in Train Sim World. So this was a really exciting moment. Again, if you're seeing this for the first time, I really plead you, go check out the Dovetail Direct Spring 2024 video. It's one of the most recent videos on our YouTube channel. Go watch that because it's really brilliant. A lot of love went into producing that. But of course, we did reveal Tadami Line is coming. This is very early in development. So again, we have to caveat that pretty much anything Tadami Line especially, we're not really at the stage to talk about other than we're going to Japan, Tadami Line will come, and here are some early access screenshots. And this is by Union Workshop. So that's a really fast rundown of all the things in the Direct. But let's bring the cameras back. Where's my camera scene? There it is. So we did, of course, have a bit more in our roadmap. And if you read our roadmap, it mentions that there is a US route as well. A US route that I think a lot of people in the inner circles of the community are very heavily speculating and throwing ideas of what this could be. It's worth mentioning this because we want to talk about it. We really do. But there are specific reasons why we can't talk about it. There are licensings and there are reasons why simply under our agreement we can't share more, and we really want to. But at this point, we just kind of have to leave you on it that there is more US content releasing soon at a date that we can't yet disclose, that we don't yet know, and that we're working on it. But we are excited to show you it when we come, and there isn't really anything else we can add. And I know it's frustrating that there's no, why can't we say more about it? And it's hard to understand that, but I would say simply take our word in for it, take the messaging we've used for it, and understand that as much as we want to talk about it, we can't just do it just yet. You're going to have to wait a little bit longer, but it's exciting, and I am excited to share that with all of you when we're ready. Oh, we did have another thing added to our roadmap graphic, if you've seen it, which was a German logo. And I know that's raised a few eyebrows as well. So that's another one where we're probably not quite at the point that we want to talk about it. But it has been added to the roadmap. I would use the roadmap timeline. So we have in our latest graphic, we have kind of the 0 to 3 months. That's kind of things happening soon. 4 to 6 months is stuff that we want you to be aware of. You can expect it in that period, and then the release date to be seen. So I think it's sat in that 4 to 6 months. It's something that's kind of in the near future, but right now we're not quite ready to share too many more details. And I think you've had quite a lot of releases, so I hope you're excited about what we've already started talking about. Before we move on to some proper questions, Matt, is there anything you really want to talk about and discuss about the Direct, about the new announcements, about all the things that we've talked about?
Oh, I mean, it's good to get a bunch of that stuff out there and tell people and put some details out there. It's going to be a fun time. I know the beta testers have been having a ton of fun with some of this new content that we've been talking about. And yeah, and there's more coming beyond that, as you've mentioned, which is also, looking really strong. So yeah, it's a good announcement. I've enjoyed looking at the feedback and the speculation, and I couldn't help myself. I went and doused the forum with a bit of petrol just to stir things up a bit. It's in my way, and then just sit there with the popcorn, enjoying the results of my work. But yeah, no, keep it up, folks. It's great fun, and I think you're going to really enjoy the content as it comes out. There's some absolute classics in there. That's not just me saying it because it's me. I'm kind of parroting what the beta testers are telling me as well, which is always kind of my barometer for okay, this is in the right direction. This is looking good. So goblins especially is just superb, really is.
Right, well, in that case, here we are. You've seen me run through the direct bits. That's it. I've got nothing more on my stream screen, so you're just going to be looking at me and Matt for the rest of the stream now. This is where we're going to dive into some of the questions that you raised in the question thread. We'll answer some stuff live, but we've got some that people have already kind of pre-sent us that we want to run through first. And we'll start with some of the newly announced content questions. And again, I want to caveat all of this by saying many things we can't yet talk about, whether that's because it's very early in development or we're not quite at a point where we know for sure. But there are a few things we can talk about. And we're going to start with the Overground routes. Right now, release date, we can't share that. We're not at a point where we're able to release that to you, but obviously it's coming soon. You can see in our roadmap it's slotted in the 0 to 3 months. So you should expect it relatively soon, but as of for the exact release timing, we're not able to release that just yet. But in terms of the Overground, we need to talk about the onboard announcements. And unfortunately, this isn't something that we've been able to get into the route. As much as we'd love to have it, and Matt, I think you can kind of elaborate a little bit more on this. It's something that we
Yeah.
started to do, but we weren't able to really get it to the quality we wanted, right?
Well, we've been looking at it, and we had a first pass, but it wasn't really where we wanted it to be. No, what we've done is we've kind of gone back to the drawing board. There's no point making a system which just makes everything harder to make. Um, because something else will suffer as a result of that. What you need is a new system in the game, which the third-party developers have all kind of custom cutting and bespoke implementation for each of the trains, and that's fine. That's a completely valid way for them to do it, but we need to have something in the core that you can just bolt onto a train, and it then adds the passenger support to it or the announcement support to it. So that's what we're currently working on, what that would look like, and then we're also going to couple that with platform announcements as well and link the two systems together. So we've been doing some experiments with platform announcements as well as on train announcements. They're not in the London Overground route. Don't expect them in any upcoming route at this point. So we're still working on the on the sort of the design and the implementation. But it just did want to feedback and say, look, we're not ignoring that. We are trying to get that in, and we'll come back with more information when we've actually got something, give you a demo of it, and do a proper announce for it and announce for the announcements.
Yeah, an announce for the announcements. But yeah, we know obviously a lot of people have shared their thoughts of really wanting that feature. And unfortunately, we've not been able to add it. But when it comes to comparing it with other third-party releases, again, as Matt says, it's quite a bespoke system that you made. And as well, we've tried it. It wasn't really where we'd wanted it. So that's where we are with the onboard announcements. But in terms of other Overground bits of information we can share, and I want to clarify with layering and release dates. Again, we'll share more when it comes to each release. In terms of layers, we're still testing Gen 8 and Gen 9 platforms. So once we're close to that release point, we're talking more about the routes. We'll share more exactly how that breaks down specifically between Gen 8 platforms, Gen 9 platforms. But London Overground traffic freight layers, you can expect the Class 66 and the FKA with wagons from Southeastern High Speed. You get the cement wagon from the Tees Valley Class 31. And then you also get the wagons from the Cargo Line Volume 2 release as well. The Steam Special, there was a question about this. This is with the Jubilee class. So it won't be with the Flying Scotsman, but it will be with the Jubilee. In terms of AI, so you have the full East Coast mainline timetable with the 801 Azuma, the Class 700, and also on a section of the London Overground routes near Crouch Hill, you actually get the East Coast Main Line crossing above as well. So that's kind of where that traffic will layer on. That's all we've really got to talk about Overground. I know there's a little bit more that people want to know, there's more we want to dive into, but we're not quite at that point yet. But moving on to Rosenheim, the reason why we can share a little bit more on Rosenheim is because I can also tell you that Rosenheim is likely to be the next release. And I say that sparingly, I say that likely, that's currently the plan. So you can expect an article for Rosenheim, again, this is Bahnstrecke Rosenheim to Salzburg. You should be able to expect that fairly soon. I won't put a release date on that again, but keep your eye out on our update pages and our announcements, and we'll be sharing more for that. People have been asking about the layers, so I've got a little list here. Let me check some of these off. So you've got the DBBR 101, you've got the DBBR 103 with the Heritage IC train, the Red BR 628, the Red BR 363 as well. You've got the Vectron Ienos wagon. I hope I didn't pronounce that too bad. You got the UBB 4024 from Vorarlberg, and then also the BR 185. So that's kind of your freight layering coming onto that. And there was also a question of what year the route's set in, and that I believe, Matt, is 2013. And you put a little mention that is because that's kind of when it's the current routes with the DB trains. Is there anything to add there?
Yeah, so essentially it's a window in time where the DB trains are still running. Deutsche Bahn trains are still running on it predominantly. Later than that date, it kind of becomes a private operator, and there's no license for that certainly at the moment. But we also wanted to try and make it a more modern representation of the route. So this is a sort of a window where Salzburg is the modern implementation of Salzburg. This is a real world overlap essentially, where you get the slightly older trains with the newer look on the route as well. So the route should age quite nicely as well.
And that's yeah, so that's 2013. The route is set. And in terms of the other kind of first party TSW routes that we've seen questions on was obviously San Bernardino and Semmeringbahn. It was really asking about freight layers. So there will be freight on San Bernardino, but in terms of details, we'll have to wait a little bit closer to the release until we can confirm more on that. And with Semmeringbahn, again, there will be a range of freight running up and down the routes. We'll have to share more when we're a bit closer and when we're ready to really kind of announce what that is, and once we've really figured it out as well. A note on Semmeringbahn though is that the 1116 and the BMZ coach, they will layer back onto Rosenheim once Semmeringbahn is released. So that's kind of all I can really give you in terms of news about the new announcements. I know there is a lot of questions, so keep talking about them in a discussions thread, and we'll share more when we're ready. But Matt, this is something that I really want to talk to you a bit more about, and the West Somerset Railway remaster we talked about was a good example of this, and it's kind of how do we look to incorporate the back catalogue of content into new content? Essentially, how do we look to utilize as much of our back catalogue as much as we can?
So when the gameplay teams are looking at what they're going to look at, or what they're going to do for the gameplay on the route, particularly for the timetable. As they'll look at real world examples, they'll look at photographs, news articles, the specials, the oddities that are run on the route, as well as the sort of the regular passenger and freight services and the kinds of trains that you'd see on there. And they have a look at a back catalogue, and they have a look at all the content that's out that everyone you've all already got, and they'll work out what makes sense to use on it. And sometimes it's like the Vectron running on the 2013 Salzburg route, sort of nonsense because Vectron didn't exist in 2013. But by doing it this way, it's actually that no, I just reread the list, and it's not the Vectron, it's just the wagon. A Ionos wagon existed back then. That's fine. But there are cases where there'll be a year mismatch, and it's kind of like, well, how out of place is that versus the extra gameplay and variety that you'll get through that. So there's then a question, and a goal really is to try and utilize as much of the collection that's there to add flavor, variety, and so forth, and depth, so that it's really more than just the sort of the main thrust of services that sort of come in the included stock, and then try and bring as much other stock into there as possible. And you can see good examples like Southeastern High Speed. I think at this point, bringing in all of the different layers, I think has got something like 40, 50 layers. which is by far and away the most layers in any of our stuff. And each layer is used to bring in different combinations and types of stock from different packs. And sometimes that stock is just there to fill up a yard. So, for example, at Dagenham Docks in South Eastern, when you're driving by, you'll see a variety of wagons in the yard. And there's DLC added as layers there to put that stock there from the collection. If you don't have the particular requirements that you need for that, then it just doesn't appear, and you can still carry on enjoying the route. So, yeah, we try and use as much as the catalog as we can, and then figure that out. And that's really part of almost step one of the process is kind of like figuring out what's going to go where and how much you can use.
And that, with that kind of ends, again, that ends how much we're going to really be sharing on the new announcements we talked about since the direct. So I can see in the chat, there's a lot of questions. I want more news on the Japanese route. I know you all do, but we just aren't at a point where we can share them. And again, quite frankly, a lot of them are still very early in development. So a lot of things could change, but you have to wait until the news announcements come out. But one thing to think about is that Rosenheim will likely be the next release. So that's the Bahnstrecke Rosenheim to Salzburg route. We should have something for you on that very soon, and then we'll follow on from there. So now we're going to kind of switch over to general questions, general talking points around the community. And we need to start on something really big in the community, and that is the PC editor. We kind of come back to the PC editor, I think, since it's released quite a few times now. And I think the story is kind of the same as it has been for a little while, and that it still needs improvements. Obviously, we released the editor in kind of an early access kind of beta state, where we know that there are still issues with it, and we want to get improvements for it as soon as we can. And I think the big thing that we're seeing from a lot of the community and how we kind of fundamentally support the conversation around editor is how can we at Dovetail help the community learn as best they can. We've seen amazing stuff already from the community. I want to just state firstly that some of the things that you've been able to figure out, that you've been able to share to us, has been wonderful. And I'm hoping that when we come to the next roadmap in March, we bring back the community highlight section. We really showcase more of that, because some of the projects you work on is just fantastic. But we know that we can do a better job at supporting you. We started off, I want to start on the kind of masterclass system we had. The plan was that once the editor released with Train Sim Mod 4, we have masterclass series that kind of kick off around the release. We get everyone into the editor. And then the idea was to kind of have these follow up quite regularly. And the actual reality is there hasn't been many masterclass episodes since we started doing them. And part of that is because there are issues with the editor that are ongoing that make it difficult for people to come in and help create guides. But we can do better. And the plan, hopefully, to move forward is to try and turn some of our masterclasses away from maybe 30 minutes to an hour or more videos to kind of really dive into a tool, and hopefully make shorter guides. Essentially, what you think of maybe a 5-minute tutorial if you're just looking up how do I do X thing, because we know there are functions within the editor that only we would know. You can't look these up on like Unreal Engine forums, for example, because it's quite a dedicated tool. So that's the plan in terms of masterclasses, kind of rebrand them into shorter pre-recorded little guides, and I'll share more on in terms of where we are up to with that. So I know that was a big talking point, and I think a lot of the conversation around the editor is a bit about how do we at Dovetail support you, the community, from creating better stuff and more stuff, because the real answer is you're all amazing. The stuff you make is fantastic. We just want to make that process easier. But what I will say is the editor has played such a really vital role at bringing in third-party partners. We say this kind of all the time because it's true. It's been fantastic, the amount of people that have reached out to us saying, I was playing around with the editor, I've been able to learn the tool. And Matt, I think you can testify for this, but we've had members of the community reach out to us since learning the PC editor, and now they're actually making content that have kind of gone into that third-party list. We say in the Dovetail Direct, they're part of our kind of a release schedule in the future.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. Some of the names that came up on the Dovetail Direct stream are people who played with the editor and got directly in touch, and have now got projects underway that will be coming out as DLC at some point. So, yeah, so we're looking at what we can do. It's quite a specialist skill modifying the editor. You have to be quite careful. It's very easy to break things quite fundamentally with the editor. It's also very complicated. But we are taking on board the feedback, and we have a list of things that need to be dealt with. as a matter of priority. I don't have any dates and times at the moment for these for this work, but no, it is very much on our mind that it needs to be done, and we are working on that.
Yeah. And I think just to set expectations kind of as they should be, as much as we are committed to this tool, there might not be major improvements now for a couple months. We'll have to keep you updated on this, but generally coming back each month for the roadmap, you might expect to still have more editor improvements that you wish to have. So we're still working on this, but again, it's worth saying that the actual general conversation around how we can support you with Dovetail, I'm hoping to start improving that with better masterclass or guide tutorial style content in the immediate. And we'll keep you updated about the long-term plan. But obviously, it's worth very much stating that we are committed to improving the editor as best as we can, because it's fundamentally an amazing tool that has brought in such a great ecosystem to our entire franchise. Now, let's talk about something really fun. We're going back to the West Somerset remaster. We keep going back to it. It's just lovely. But Matt, I think it's very clear we've had such a positive reaction to this. And we're really happy with how the remaster's gone. So I mean, I just really want to talk a little bit about, and just really, really quickly here about, is the idea of doing remasters something that we would revisit? I know it's come up in the questions from our community quite a lot, and they're saying like, oh, the West Somerset remaster was amazing. Would we consider it more? As of right now, I don't think we've got anything down to confirm. So it's worth noting that we're not here to announce anything new. But Matt, how have you found the remaster really?
It's been a great community response, and I haven't actually seen some figures yet for how it is in terms of people playing, but yeah, it's really. Hang on one second.
Technical difficulties?
Yes, please. Yeah. Sorry. No,
I think this
leave
is a
that
good
one.
time to marvel at Matt's lovely cat
I
ears.
do apologise. So where was I at? So we had the remaster, and so we're looking at, but we see lots of really good feedback, and people obviously appreciating it. And it's obvious, you look at it, you can see it's a step up, and the new timetable gives you a ton of stuff to do. Is there a desire to do more? Well, I know that Liam and others have got their eye on projects, more passion projects, which they're in two cases are underway on. But as with any passion project, we have no idea when that will come to fruition. This is someone doing it in their spare time as a hobby. So not going to say any more about it, because it may not even get to a point of release, because life happens. So there is a desire. They had a really good experience, and there's other people who've expressed an interest in looking at that that kind of thing. And I'm doing one actually as well. It's quite a good learning tool for people to look at these things. But the other thing we are doing is having a look at it from a non-hobbyist perspective, to try and work out how we can how can we turn this into something which is actually done as a non-passion project, well, they're all passion projects, everyone's passionate about what we do, but you know what I mean, as something which is done as an official project. So we're trying to work out what that might look like as we understand the results of West Somerset Railway better, in terms of what it meant for people enjoying the product, and so forth. So there's a lot of complex things that need to be looked at in order to figure out how to do these things, and what that means, and what's a good idea and what wasn't, what went well with this remaster, maybe what we need to do better next time in terms of process and so forth internally. And then we can sort of take that big picture and really factor into what we decide to do going forwards. But we are exploring all options on the table. It's been a positive experience, and we want to try and recreate that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good message. Essentially, is that what we've seen from the West Somerset Railway remaster is just amazingly positive signs. So we have ideas, we have aspirations. We can't really dive into anything yet, because in terms of timelines, we can't overpromise. So we'll share more when they come, but just know that the West Somerset remaster was fantastically positive. And so we're currently looking into that space. I've seen a lot of questions in the chat. I'm keeping a watchful eye over it. So if you haven't already, if you're joining the stream now and you haven't seen some of the earlier bits, we did mention the unnamed yet to be named US route that some of you may have a bit of a speculation on what it could be. We've said as really as much as we can. We are still awaiting licensor approvals, so we can't really say much more other than that. I know it's disappointing, I know it's frustrating, but if you're feeling that, so are we. So yeah, we can't really say much more there. In terms of Overground and Rosenheim, we haven't got any release dates, but what I can say is that Rosenheim will likely be the first release of the two, specifically those two. And then we'll talk about releases coming on after that. So no release dates to share, no juicy dates to save just yet, but again, everything we're going to be talking about in the next coming months. So keep a keen eye over announcements and our update boards. So let's talk about suspension. Suspension improvements was something that this roadmap we moved from. I believe it was originally back in December. It was part of our winter core bundle, and that moved out of the winter core bundle. And I believe this is now where we've moved it to the release date to be confirmed. There is a reason for this. And it kind of boils down to some of the things we've kind of been seeing with Formation. And part of the reason why we released Formation into open beta was because we want to make sure we iron out the issues. We want to make sure that it's a good experience for people trying out the feature for the first time. And well, when it comes to suspension, and Matt, I'll leave this for your actual more dev insight kind of mind. But the reality is it's taking a little longer than expected, and there's more we want to work on. We don't want to release something that's a half feature. We want to release something that works and works well, and we want you to enjoy it. But that does mean that sometimes it needs a little bit more time in the oven.
Yeah, in this instance, it's not ready. It has been made some decent progression. I mean, it is continuing to progress. It's not stalled. But there are multiple types of suspension that need to be implemented and have now actually been implemented. But now, as we start rolling that suspension onto more wagons, coaches, trains, and so forth, so we're finding more issues that so it needs to go back to an engineering team to refine the physics simulation so that it works in this case and doesn't break in other cases. The problem is that if this is wrong and it's rushed, your trains bounce off the track, or they just it's because it kills the experience. And we've had problems in the past where a number of you probably remember where there were cases where you would just fly off the track for no apparent reason, particularly if you were hard on the braking. And we don't want a repeat of that situation. And that's exactly what this could create if it's not done right. So I've seen some wagons were implemented. I think in our test builds, the 4024 has now got it. And I saw a video of the Class 66. So that's our first triple axle, which has got it. So again, it's another sort of a tick on the box, and that looks tremendous. I mean, the video that I saw of that one, of the gentle rocking of the cab and the bouncing over the junctions, particularly the points, was really good. So it's now there's still some tuning to get that feeling right. So we're gonna run those videos, but it gets drivers to actually feed that back, because it's difficult to understand. I mean, some of the initial feedback on this was, wow, that's too much. And then all the drivers weighed in and said, no, if anything, it's not enough. These trains bounce all over the place. So, it's about finding the right balance for all of these things. And sometimes we might need to overdo something. Sometimes we might need to underdo something, because the last thing you want to do is um, make people sick when they're driving, get nauseous because of the train bouncing all over the place. So a bit like we put the zero out. Now, we can't turn suspension off. It's kind of part of the train's setup, but we want to find a nice balance where it's comfortable for everybody. And I think we're getting there. Like I said, it's on more and more and more trains now internally, and that's allowing us to really test the feature. But we're not there yet. We've still got some more types to implement. It's going to take some more time, and then it's going to need tuning, and then it just needs beta testers essentially to just live with it for a bit and drive and spend a lot of time, because sometimes you only really can measure the quality of these features by just living with it for a bit and driving trains with it, rather than just fire it up. Yes, I went over a couple of junctions, it bounced, tick that mark, and then release it. That's not enough testing in this instance. It needs a lot more. So it's getting that, it's progressing. I'm really happy with where it's going, but it needs that extra time. So it pains me because it's probably one of my favorite features that we've been working on, because it has such a tangible change to the driving experience. But that makes it all the more important, given the impact of the driving experience, that it doesn't damage the driving experience and actually enhances it. Because when it works so well. So bear with us. Bear with us. We're doing this to make it right.
And again, we'll share more news on that as with everything. Usual spaces, but we're looking forward to finally kind of giving you more on that in the near future, hopefully. So
I'm going to try and sneak Alex a couple of videos that you can sneak out via the appropriate media at some point, just so you can see some of this stuff yourself.
well, we have actually managed to put out a couple clips in one of our past roadmaps, I believe. But more videos is better. More
It
content is
needs
always better.
updating. It needs updating with some new trains.
Well, you know what? I'll chase Matt on that then. That'll be. You said it now. You can't take that back. So,
That's fine.
okay, let's take stock for a moment. I've seen a couple more questions pop up, so I'm assuming some people may have missed some of the intro bits. But formation. When is it coming to console? We hear this question a lot. So TLDR is, we want it to come to console, and it will come to console hopefully soon. We are seeing positive things from the open beta that is on Steam and Epic. It's much easier to get it to kind of an early state to test on Steam and Epic, because while you're on PC, it's much better to go. You don't have to jump through like certification loopholes that you do on console. So we're testing it. We're making sure that it's ready, and we're seeing positive signs. But we know that there are still issues we want to iron out first. And once it's fully ready to go, we'll get it on consoles as well. As for we just talked about suspension. There was a question of substitution as well. I did see in the chat. There are still ongoing issues with substitution, and we are still working to kind of address this. It is one of the issues that we listed as our kind of top priority from the last roadmap back in December. And it is something that we are very much aware of and working to address. So you'll have to kind of stay with us on that, and we'll update you soon. But there hasn't been any progress to really talk about too much on that. And now this is something really quite important that we want to make sure we talk about. And that's with the recent large patch with the winter core update. We obviously added a huge range of changes. And one of those changes was related to modding. It was meant to support mods and the modding community as best as we can. We want to talk a little bit first about what was the intention of this change. So the intention of that update was to allow mods to work in all cases as they would expect. I think something that we need to clarify first is that we obviously can't inherently support mods 100% with the guarantee that they're all going to work all of the time, because mods are essentially unofficial content. They're not something that we develop. Obviously, it's made by all of you. But it's important to recognize that modding is a very important part of the community. And we'd be fools not to recognize that. So this update was specifically made to make it so that mods should work as expected in cases since we launched Train Sim Mod 4, that wasn't the case. So this was a change we made. But this did require repackaging the mods. And I want to say a quick shout out to all of the people that have created mods and do share mods, such as the popular ones, God Mode, changes to signaling, changes to lighting. They were that you all rushed pretty fast to get a repackage of your mods within the first 24 hours of us releasing this patch. And generally we do our best to support mods, but sometimes we need to make a change that means mods won't work in order for mods to work better in the future. And that was very much one of those changes. Matt, I think your insight is useful here, but that's generally the kind of approach we took with that change.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of changes that have happened in the core, which have meant, have sort of enforced the need for the people, for modders to just change how they package things slightly, which everyone seems to have jumped on really quickly. But in the long run, these actually work really, really well with what the sort of the long-term direction for where modding needs to go, or mod support rather needs to go. So hopefully, we've turned a corner. We're on the right path now, and we'll keep an eye on things. And we know you'll hold us to account if we don't, and tell us what mods do and don't work. What I would ask is if your favorite mod stops working following an update, have a word with the or post on whatever Discord or so forth. You talk to the author and find out when they're going to be, if they've reviewed it and whether or not, because it may simply be it just needs an update again, rather than being anything more fundamental. And if you're a mod author and you're having problems being able to make your mod work on any updated versions, then just drop us a note so that we can find out more and we can give you a hand.
Yes, I mean, that's it. Again, we do our best to support the entire modding community as much as we can. We hope that you understand that we can't always guarantee the functionality of a mod from one update to the next, but it's worth saying that they are in our testing process. As of quite recently, we have put some of the core mods that we know a lot of players use. Again, I'd bring up God mode as one of them. I know signaling changes is another. We started implementing into our testing process to make sure that where we can, we don't step on the wrong wire and break mods. You know, we want to make sure that we support that as best we can. But there may be times like in the last update where mods will require a repackage, but generally we do this to support the community. So we hope you understand. And we think generally now, once the mods have been repackaged, we should be in a better spot for the modding community into the future. Now, next up, there was a couple mentions on our thread, our Q&A thread, that related to Steam physics. And we do obviously have the Peak Forest Class 104 pack coming up soon, and we've recently done the West Somerset Railway remaster, which included the Scotsman and some Steam locos in that. It's worth kind of bringing back to our initial message when it comes to Steam physics, and it's just generally something that us at Dovetail, we're not really actively working on right now. We know that there's obviously a keen interest for the Steam community as well. But it's worth clarifying that our external developers, our third parties, they're getting in contact, they're showing an interest, they want to develop Steam as well, and we'll support them as much as we can. There is nothing really at this stage for us to really share on that in terms of what third parties they are and what they are developing. And part of that is from the PC editor. But it is worth saying that from us at Dovetail, at least, we're not actively doing anything more with Steam. So in terms of the actual physics improvements, there won't be any changes for that in kind of the near future. Now, we know obviously a lot of you are keen Steam physics fans, but in terms of the content, that's kind of what you should expect. We will have more from third parties, and any third party that wants to kind of get involved with Steam, we will be supporting them as best we can, of course. But that's generally where we are with Steam physics, and we've got a kind of written announcement for this as well. As for another thing we've seen from players, and I think, Matt, this might be something you can kind of go into a bit more context for, is the Z fighting on Xbox consoles. It's something that I know we brought up in the last roadmap as well.
So one of the things I mean, there is a quick fix. I say quick. It's a laborious fix where you can. So the Z fighting is caused by decals, which are literally they like stickers. It's a 3D modeling technique, and it's caused by them being so close to the surface. Obviously, they're on the surface that they actually start interfering, and hence you get this Z, what they call Z fighting. Z meaning depth. So, and it looks like flickering. It's where you'll see some labels flickering on the dashboard, for example. It's just it's that. It only seems to happen on Xbox. Now, in the past, what we've done is gone into individual, find each decal, and it's just moved very slightly. And normally Z fighting is a rounding thing within. It's a maths thing within the thing where what was 0 and 0.1 becomes 0 and 0, and hence you start seeing this problem. And the difference is the solution is that you just pull the decal slightly off, so that when it gets rounded, it's closer, then you don't see that problem. But that's such a labor-intensive fix across everything there. And what I'm really curious to understand, and what I'm tasking the team with to look into is why. Why is Xbox different? Because it may be that there is a more straightforward fix, which will just make this not a problem anymore. So that's the current tech. I'm looking into understanding more about the cause and why it's happening on Xbox and not anywhere else. Of course, if you find it is happening anywhere else, let me know. But I've only seen complaints about it on Xbox, and then we can try and work out the right solution for it. And if that's the labor intensive going into every bit of content, then we can work out how and when we do that. If there's I'm all about magic button fixes, man. If we can get a magic button fix which resolves the problem, that's a win for everybody. So, it's on my mind as something that I'm chasing up with the team. I was talking to the artists today about it.
And just to mention, because obviously a lot of the questions we're talking about at the moment, they come from our roadmap Q&A thread. And we want to make sure that we acknowledge as many of those questions as we can. So just to mention a few, these are a few listed issues that as of right now, we don't have any big updates on, we don't have a huge amount of news for, but we want to say that we're aware of them. And I've checked today that a lot of these issues are in our Jira system, they're in our ticket system, and that our teams are willing to look at, they are ready to look at because of the priority lists that we have. This includes the BR420 improvements. There isn't really any progress to share just yet on that. I know there's mentions, and there's been mentions tonight as well, for the AI PIS issues on Southeastern High Speed. That is something that has been logged. It's still something for the teams to get around to looking at. I know the London Commuter 377 gangway doors being open, again, another thing that has been ticketed that we still have yet to get around to addressing. And then generally
Sorry,
just,
just on the AOPIS issues, just want to add one extra thing in there. So I spent a bit of time looking at that one because the team actually who are working on who did the regional railways 323 fixed the AOPIS issue on the 323 and on all the other 323s that had the problem, and they've outlined what they did, and I've tried to see if that applies to the stock on Southeast, and it doesn't. So we've had a first pass over it, and now it's either a different problem or just because it's different code, it might be the same problem just in a different way. So no tangible progress, but it's getting time spent on it. So we'll get a fix for that as soon as we can.
that's a good mention, because I think a lot of the time when we say that we haven't got any progress, I think in terms of all of you watching now, the progress you would see is an improvement or a change at least. It doesn't mean that we're just not doing anything. It just means that we may have tried a fix, it may not have worked, it may not be kind of reacting the way we'd expect it to. And so that's kind of what we mean by no progress. It means no visible progress from kind of your end. Yeah, I also wanted to mention that I know in the thread at least there was a lot of mentions for the 801, the class 801 Azuma. We're generally reviewing the East Coast mainline issues. This can be various things for the Azuma, which is either the gangways not being connected or animated, the pantograph on the 9-car variants. I know there's a mention for DSD going off with the reverser in neutral, as well as the PIS being one station ahead. Again, these are all logged. They're all issues that we're trying to get around to reviewing. And we're currently looking over East Coast Mainline and the Azuma as well. Something I've seen in the chat actually is something that I raised today. Since the Winter Core update with the HST, the GWE HST, when you put it into Livery Designer, for some reason it has the GWR Power Coach livery on it incorrectly. It's another issue that we're aware of, and it was something that we're
Can I
hopefully...
interrupt you there, Alex?
Yes.
So again, on conversation with the lead artist, I've just submitted a fix for that.
Oh,
So that will be in a upcoming patch. Literally hot off the press. That one went in earlier, a couple of hours ago. So that'll have to go through the usual release processes, but fix coming.
oh, that's brilliant news. I mean, that was another thing that, again, we were seeing from the community. I know personally I was raising tickets for that earlier today. Well, it's good that there is a fix coming. So expect, hopefully, a resolution for that soon. This is why I guess it's a good chance for me to call out. This is why it's really important to share your feedback. We do read the forums, we do read the Discord. If you tag us in threads, if you put your threads in the troubleshooting section of the forums, we will read it. We will submit it to our teams, and we'll try and get fixes for different issues where we can, where we have time, where we have priorities within our own teams. And I guess that's a really good example of that.
Someone's actually also mentioning the talent 2, presumably. I mean, you're just saying BR442, I presumably mean the one on Keoln-Aachen. So there's a fix coming for that one as well. Again, that one's just waiting to go through the process. Submitted that one a little while ago. So these things are slowly we're getting through them.
Fantastic. Now, a question, a very important question that we do want to talk a little bit more about. And I think this is something that we've seen asked a couple times since we mentioned it on the Dovetail Direct. Another call out to that. But I guess this is something for you, Matt. What does it really mean when we get excited about third parties kind of being involved with Train Sim World? When we bring in more third parties to our ecosystem, what does that really mean? What is the benefit to that?
Well, having more third parties in this in the ecosystem, what it does is it adds to the variety, the different range. We're pretty focused, and I don't know if anyone's noticed, but we're pretty focused on the UK, the US, and Germany, and pretty much content. Just in case that wasn't obvious, and with the odd journey somewhere else. And there's a reason for that. The team understand it better. They've spent a lot of time knowing that. It takes a long time to build up that railfan knowledge on those and to get the skill in those areas. So you can't just jump into a new territory and become instantly a rail fan of years of knowledge and actually put that into the game. And what third parties do is they bring that to the table. They bring their own enthusiasm in, whether it's in railways in Japan or railways in Romania and other places, and they can bring that knowledge and they can bring their skill and use the tools then to create that content. And that's always going to be, really cool. They also have different approaches to how they do things. And for those of you that have ever used any of the Union Workshop routes on Trains and Classic, you can tell from a screenshot that it's a Union Workshop route. They have a distinct visual style. And you'd think, well, grass is grass, sky is sky, mountains are mountains. But when you're looking at Union Workshop's version of it, it's really crazy. It's really cool that everyone has their own unique visual style, things that are important to them that they put the time into, and other things which they don't deem as important, they put less time into. And that's that level of variety of how they spend the time on a project, what they do with it, the way they represent it, and it just means that there's a lot more variety there in development and coming through. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that suddenly, if you've got 30 third parties, I can't remember how many there are, but let's throw out 30 out there as a number. If you've got 30 third parties, that all of a sudden the QA team is going to become bombarded with tons of stuff that they haven't got aren't able to cope with, because the QA teams are affected by what gets through to release, not what's in development. So, and then QA and third party teams generally will take a lot longer over doing a release, because they're quite often doing it in their evenings after work and their spare time, and life gets in the way. So, what might be a similar length project in hours could take years to come to fruition in some cases, because that's just the time that they've got to spend on it. And in some cases, they'll just decide they want to spend more time on it because, a lot of third parties are working on these things as passion projects as well. Um, so, these projects come through, and then once they reach a certain point, they're then able to, join the release track and get into QA for testing and so forth, and then we can manage that process through. So, having that wide variety of third parties is a real strength going forwards. It means that you've all got some really cool variety and different stuff to look forward to as these developers proceed with what they're doing. It's really, really interesting watching their progress.
Yeah, and that's really it. I mean, more third parties means just a greater diversity of what you can expect from Train to More content and upcoming releases. So something to touch on. I know there was a mention. So we're seeing this. I think we're seeing this all through the chat, and we're seeing since all of the announcements. Just to clarify once again, anything to do from the Dovetail Direct, we don't have dates on yet. No release dates have been announced. You'll have to wait for more details of the routes, more details from different teaser trailers or different articles we'll put up for those. But we don't have any release dates for Overground, London Overground, don't have a release date. We don't have a release date for Rosenheim to Salzburg, or for San Bernardino, or for Semmeringbahn. Not yet, or any of the third parties for that matter. But what I will say is that you can expect Rosenheim to Salzburg will be our next release, likely. So we'll share more, and we'll hopefully have more for you very soon on that. There was a mention here of someone put in our thread for our Q&A. Have we got an update on unachievable gold medals? Now, I know for a fact that since our last Winter Core update we put through, many of the changes we put through that was on scoring. And a lot of it was actually looking at, is there an unachievable platinum or gold medal, and is it kind of achieving at the right percentage amount? So a gold medal should be 50% of the total maximum possible score, and a platinum would be 90% of that maximum score. We put through a lot of changes for this. There were still a few that were outstanding, and kind of gold medals folds into that update around scoring. So if there are some still unachievable gold medals, make sure that you've flagged it to us in our troubleshooting, but we're still working through some of those changes as well. Now, there was a mention for the Glossop bug preventing services to Manchester. Sadly, we don't have any progress to show yet, but teams are very much still aware, and that's something we do want to address when we can. And now, something quite interesting, and I want to kind of fold this on into the player survey. The question was, why is route merging, is route merging going to be possible? And when they say route merging, what they really mean is if the kind of stop end of one route is the same start location of another route, well, why can't you just roll up to the end of one and start in the next seamlessly, essentially? this was something that I want to pass to you in a moment, Matt, but actually it was included in our player survey. And if you want to look at the player survey, and if you haven't heard of the Train Some Well player survey, check out the description of this video right now. If you just open the little button, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Twitch, you're going to have to jump over to YouTube, I'm afraid, because we can't put it in Twitch. But yeah, we have a link to a player survey. And what we're doing is we're gathering all the feedback from all of you on a variety of different things. And I think it's important for us to just say quickly that all of the things we're talking about in our player survey are things that we've seen from the community, from community discussions, from community threads and mentions and different suggestions. This is not a gauge of what we are going to currently do. It's definitely, you shouldn't see the player survey and be like, right, they're doing that. You know, they're definitely changing this because it's in the survey. It's not true. We've just seen it being talked about in the community. And we thought, you know what, why don't we pose this question that we've seen to everyone and get some kind of general feedback? There isn't really anything to say on that survey just yet. And if we have some cool, interesting findings from that survey, we will share them. But you know, right now we're just putting out feelers. We're testing out different opportunities, and one of those was mentioned was the idea of route merging. So I mean, when we talked about recently in our announcements, again, no release date yet, San Bernardino sits really lovely in a nice snug little position between the end or start, however you look at it, of Antelope Valley and Cajon Pass. And so, you know, technically you know, in an ideal world, technically you could start one, finish it, move on to the next, finish that, move on to the next. You can do that if you want to start your route in different ways, but is there a way to do that seamlessly? Well, we're looking into that, and we're kind of seeing what the community are feeling around that idea. Now, Matt, I don't know if there's anything you want to add specifically here.
So complexities around route merging. There's a few areas, and some degree of route merging is technically at the fringe ends of technology possible. So, for example, when we released Wuppertal route, Wuppertal to Hagen, and if you look at Hagen to Finnentrop, they both feature a common tile, or tile, three tiles, in fact, I think, around the Hagen area. And because of that extensive overlap, it's possible to merge those two routes together only on PC and only by literally hacking files around. The problem is that the signaling doesn't work properly. The gameplay doesn't work properly because there's no timetable for the joined route. And there just are lots of complexities along that way. So that becomes quite challenging. Now, you know, in theory, you could kind of work around that now. You've got the editor, so you could merge it in the public editor. You could merge it and then make your own gameplay for it. In theory, and free roam would I think, except the signaling perhaps not working properly. So if you're going to allow and make it, so if we're going to do route merging, then it needs to be something everyone can do and not require you to have a degree in computer science to fire up your Windows Explorer and figure out what individual files do what and copy things around. That's the domain of the modder. And I love you guys, but you're the minority. The vast majority of people just want it to work. And so we need to think about that. So you look at that and you think, well, the tracks have to join together, and the which is a solvable problem. All the signaling has to work together, and you start having to then build the route actually already designed to fit, and then break it apart. And the same then happens with the timetable. It's just like, so at the moment, timetable instructions are go to this bit of track, go to this bit of track, go to this bit of track. And sometimes that's a platform, sometimes it's a siding or whatever. What if that track doesn't exist yet? You can't make a timetable for that bit of track. So you end up saying, go into that portal. And then some point later, you come back out of that portal. Well, if you join the routes together, I've now got to give it instructions to do. And you've got to find a way to come in from this portal and go back out. And the two timetables, you can't just join them because the chance of them actually matching are pretty slim in reality. So there's a lot of complexity. I would say probably the largest complexities are around signal merging, getting the signaling systems talking to each other, and all the gameplay side of it, getting the timetables working together. Overlaying tiles on top of each other is not the hardest thing, and then making the whole thing actually work at an easy level, because and none of the platforms really support the idea of packs overlaying into the same folder. So none of the consoles, Steam is not a fan of it at all. Things get very confused when that happens. So what you need then is for the merge to happen without merge copying files. The merge has to happen in game on two separate packages, have to then become one entity dynamically on the fly. So it's yeah, it's challenging, it's difficult. The routes have to be made with the mind of being merged. So there's what we call a route origin, and everything stems from that route origin. And it's difficult for me to explain what that means to it, because you think, well, surely everything's a latitude and longitude. What do you need to worry about a route origin? And it's because of the layer underneath, the way that it's actually represented in Unreal isn't that. It's a grid system of X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z coordinates, which are then converted into a lat long system. The world origin can mean that the X, Y, Z coordinates for a particular lat long are different in different routes, depending on where that origin is. And that then means if you start merging based on the origin, the same place would be in two different locations. So that would then need to be fixed, which is really difficult. So there's a wide range of problems with route merging that just make it untenable in a lot of cases. Now we're looking to see what might that look like if you built a system around the ability to merge a route later on. So come at it the other way round, rather than merge in retrospect, but merge with it in mind. And we don't know quite how that works, but it's probably easier to think about it that way. But we're still early days on what that might look like. So it's yeah, it's challenging, yeah, we'll see how we go. Amaze says, "Can you guys not use real-world maps in a similar vein to flight sim?" So hopefully, I've tried to explain the difference between lat long versus the internal origin coordinates that are used in Unreal, and the fact that whereas a flight sim doesn't have a massive, sprawling 100-kilometer plus network of track, complicatedly wired together with signals and so forth, you've basically got terrain, so you can just have the houses or buildings and so forth on the terrain, and it's generally fine. The track network has to work and has to be precise, and you're right down on it. So if it doesn't work, doesn't look quite right, then your train's bouncing off the track and so forth. So it's a very different problem space that you get with flight sims versus train sims. It looks like it should be the same, and you know what? In an ideal world, they probably would be, but because these things have to fit on mortally owned machines rather than the infinite supercomputers, then there are ways that these things are approximated down to make them work in a more efficient manner. And some of that is where you end up with some of these challenges. So, but I'm sure in the fullness of time there will be solutions to these problems, and the team are thinking about that. It's kind of a key thing we want to try and resolve going forwards. But don't expect it anytime soon. It's not something that we've got any visions that we would immediately be solving this. But just know that it's on our mind. We are thinking about it and trying to come up with a really good idea, a good solution for that.
And I think just in the chat there from MJKCP, again, talking about the idea of expert locos and adding on to what Matt was talking about in terms of route mergers, again, everything from that survey is very much under consideration. We're looking for community sentiment, we're looking for different feedback and what your thoughts are on it, but none of it's under active development. It's just we're just getting a survey out. We're just understanding what the feelings are, what the opportunities could be for us, and kind of posing the question to all of you. So
I mean, one of the real things we want to do with the survey is put the forum into context. So as Alex said earlier on, pretty much everything in that survey we have observed on the forums. Someone has said on the forums, probably multiple people, expert locos would be cool. So we thought, well, let's ask everybody what you think of expert locos, rather than just being those 2 or 3 people, maybe more, that were on the forums talking about it. Let's just get everybody to give us their opinion on expert locos. And you can then extend that same process through every question that we've seen. It's like, a few people said this, let's see what everyone thinks about it. So that we get a real, because maybe there's a couple of people are thinking, oh, this is a really cool thing. And actually everyone's like, oh yeah, no, I like that idea. Okay, this is your opportunity to tell us, be part of this discussion.
exactly. Well, yes. So I would say if you haven't done the TSW survey, the player survey, check out the description of our YouTube video. If you're watching on Twitch, or if you're watching elsewhere, or if you're watching at a different time, you can also go to our forums. We have it pinned in our announcements as well, and fill it in. We want to know, again, we want to know what your opinions are of this, and the more people that fill it in, the better. And kind of just to add on to Matt's conversation about route merging, and again, this is from Chuck Boris in the chat. It's like, why don't you design? Well, it's easy answer then. Why don't you design with the idea of merging instead? Well, I mean, I guess you could say up until this point, we weren't necessarily really considering the merging as full. maybe not as of right now, but there was a point where we wouldn't have considered it. And now we're kind of testing, we're kind of putting out feelers, we're asking the community, is that something you might like? And now we can start thinking about, well, is this something that we want to do? Now, whether that happens or not, again, as Matt's described, the actual understanding of it and the actual implementation of it is extremely very work in progress, and it might not be something that even comes to fruition.
It's more design in progress at this point. And someone, this person, I don't know who your name was, but who said, "Why don't you just do it?" A pound in the jar for the word "just." Sorry, there is no such thing as the word "just." And the other thing is um, we've got to, in order to, once you know how it works and you structure it and you solve all of the problems to actually, to get to the end, then yes, you can just do it. But getting to the point you can just do it is the journey. That's the bit that's the where all the problems need to be solved, and that's the hard bit. Once you've solved the hard bit, then yes, making content following those rules is not the most difficult thing in the world. Shouldn't be any more difficult really than what we do for a single route. But you're talking about completely upending the paradigm of how you make a route on its head, essentially. Someone else just asked earlier on about what do you mean by an expert loco, which is probably a good shout if you're not aware of the concept of expert locos. Essentially, the difference between a normal, in quotes, loco and an expert loco is an expert loco probably comes with a 100-page manual. You cannot drive it without reading and understanding the manual, and it pretty much is a one-to-one copy of the real thing in a lot of cases. Or if not a one-to-one copy, it copies the complexity level of the real thing. There might be security reasons why it can't be an actual one-to-one copy. And there are no locos like that in the game. There are some locos which I would say err on the expert side, such as a lot of the American freight. If you take a single loco and then couple it up to another loco, set them up for multiple unit operation, and then go and couple to some wagons and sort your brakes out across all of that, a lot of people can't handle that. They don't understand how to do that, and they need to learn how to do that. And it's that I can't just get in it and drive it. I've got to do something more than a 5-minute tutorial. Is where you start leaning towards, okay, this is more of an expert line thing, an expert loco. So we had expert locos in Train Sim Classic as well, which were much more that most of the buttons and switches, or if not all the buttons and switches, are in there working. Yeah, so they're really fun. I would say the number of people who actually, well, one of the things we want to find out from the survey is that investment of time. You would need to put quite a lot of time into learning that loco to get the best out of it. Is that something that you want to do? And what do you want out of it? Versus, something which is authentic but really copes with the sort of the core functionality that you can get in and drive it. And we know that there are some people who find what we do now far too complicated. Believe it, it's true. And it's trying to find that balance. But I love the idea of expert trains as well. So it's really, this is, again, the question goes out to everybody: how important is that thing to you? Is that where we spend dev time on that versus merging routes? There's only a finite amount of time to spend these things on, and this survey allows us to gauge your priorities. What's important to you?
A brilliant answer. So I guess all I can say is go to the survey if you haven't. And actually, someone brought up an interesting thing that I forgot to mention. 20 people who do the survey will be given a random add-on of their choice. It's that easy. It doesn't take too long to fill it in. And you may think, oh, I'm not going to win, but that's what everyone says until they've been emailed that they're a winner. So yeah, feel free to fill it in. If there are any bits of the survey that you're maybe not sure of, you can always ask us a message on the forums to get some clarification there, or talk with the wider community and see what their opinions are, and fill it out as best as you can. Now, I've been reading the chat, and Matt, I think the dev insight was absolutely fantastic, but there have been so many questions, and we're going to try and get to as many as we can tonight. But what I'm going to say is I'm going to answer some of the questions I've written down. I'm going to open the floor to some live questions from the chat that we've been reading and answering as we've been going tonight anyway. So ask us the questions. Don't worry too much if we don't get to answering them tonight, right now, because tomorrow morning, part of what I'll be doing is going around and talking to someone like Matt and gathering all of your questions and putting them in our roadmap Q&A pinned thread in the general discussion on our forums. So, if you're not involved in our forums, such as Train Sim World forums, head over to the forums and you can find where that Q&A thread is. I'm going to answer basically every question that we are allowed to answer and that we can answer. tomorrow morning, essentially. So we're gonna stay around here now for another maybe 10, 15 minutes or so and answer some questions. But I have got some that have been written down already. I have been looking, and some of them are really easy questions. Some of them aren't so easy. But I'm going to start with the Keoln-Aachen timetable, and I think this is a fairly quick kind of answer. But is that ready yet? When's that coming out? Is there more information on it? As of right now, we don't have more to share on that. I think Matt, you can feel free to jump in and interrupt if anything needs clarification, but I don't believe we've got more really to share to anyone on that just yet.
So that timetable is another passion project, and Joe's simply not finished with it yet.
Yeah. So if we do have more to share on that, we will let you know. But it's something that Joe is very passionately working on in the kind of in the background as well. Mod support for consoles. This is a really tough one to answer, but the reality is mod support won't really be coming to consoles because modding isn't really something that is done on consoles. I don't really know if there's a better way of describing that, but it is something that kind of Steam and Epic players being on PC and kind of having the nature to edit your system and open your system files, it's just not something that consoles really have, especially not accessible to most of the people that use consoles. So all I can say is for unofficial mods, mod support is definitely not really something that's going to be coming to console players.
Now, we've
Um,
talked about in the past whether or not there might be the ability for someone using the editor to somehow get the mods they've used using the public editor up onto something like Creators Club, which would then be downloadable to a console. We've got a million challenges to solve before we get to that. One of which is getting the editor in a better place. And we also then need to work out the logistical challenges of how we get stuff actually onto console as well. So it's always been something that we've liked the idea of. Well, I think that PC is really the place for modding, and what we'll try and do is we're gonna let's get the PC editor, get the editor into a better place first, so that there's content being distributed, and then we can work up then how that might then migrate over to the consoles.
no. I do want to clarify, I've still got a couple more on my list and we'll have a look through some of the questions being answered. But I do want to state anything that we haven't already talked about the new announcements, that includes London Overground, Bahnstrecke Rosenheim to Salzburg, that includes Semmeringbahn and San Bernardino, as well as all of the third-party releases, Tadami Line, Five Circle. A lot of questions are naturally going to be coming up for all of those announcements, and there isn't really much more we can share at this point. Um, so you'll kind of just have to wait for more news as they come out. Obviously, with every release, we always have teaser trailers, we have articles that come out to talk more about the layers, we talk more about the different features that come with the routes, we show more in screenshots, and you can also find out from each roadmap as well. There was a question actually about when's the next roadmap. It's a monthly roadmap, so you can expect it in March. So generally, for anyone who's new here, we do our roadmaps once a month, usually, and we try and be as best as we can to do it within the first week of the month. Sometimes that means you've got 2 days to prepare a roadmap for this month, and that means we have to shift it forward a week, or for any other reason that we might have to delay it. But generally speaking, first week of a month, we'll be live for a roadmap, and that'll be in us live hello tonight, but we also do a written article version as well. So if you're not so much of a fan of me waffling on or my voice forever, whatever reason, you can just read up about the roadmap, and we obviously do have our forums where we write some of that down as well. And there was so just as an example from the chat is that will there be a Romanian route coming thanks to Trains Motion? Well, as of right now, we can't talk about anything to do with third parties. There isn't really anything to publicly share, so not a confirmed, not a no, not a yes, not a nothing. There's nothing to share, and we'll have to talk more about that when we're ready for the time. And generally, when we come to all of our third-party releases and potentially announce third parties as well, there isn't just too much we can share at this point. So you'll just have to hang on to our announcements and our updates as we go. And that's what I've got on my list. I see someone just in the chat saying prices for new routes. That kind of comes bundled in with the find out more when we're close to the time. I've seen a lot of people suggesting a certain UK loco in the chat. Matt, some of this devilish work might be your doing, but I think there was a little hint on the forums. Again, another thing that we'll talk a little bit more about when we're ready. Someone's asked, is there an update on the Xbox audio? I guess, Matt, is there actually been any changes with the Xbox audio? Any improvements?
No, we know what the problem is. So we have got that far. We know what the problem is. We know what we need to do to fix it. But if we fix it carelessly, we'll just quite significantly increase RAM usage and make everyone's game crash a lot. Yeah, we know. So we need to take. We're taking a bit more of a cautious approach on that one, and giving ourselves a window to apply the change and see what the impact is through. Because we've got the automated test harnesses, but it can't test every route, and we haven't got the capacity to do it. Take weeks to do that. So we need to apply the fix into a test build, get it into the auto test suites, and then start going through content and seeing what the delta has been on the memory. Because in some cases it might be very little, in some cases it might be more, and we can focus on the routes with like London Brighton, where memory usage is more at a premium on there. So again, this needs a careful approach. We know what the answer is. We know what change caused the low audio quality, yeah, we want to measure the impact of turning it up. We don't just want to carelessly turn the setting up and assume. The other problem with that change is that the nature of the change means it needs to recook all of the content. So that would be a full download of everything for you. So if we're going to go down that route, it needs to be once.
Yep, good answer. Beastie Bill, I've seen that you are late to the stream. Anything about Steam answered? Well, the question about Steam was kind of the same update we've had previously. So again, us at Dovetail, we're not directly doing any more active development in terms of Steam, but obviously we welcome in third parties and we support third parties that create Steam related content. And I think we'll probably
I've picked up a couple of questions actually while
yes,
we've been
fire away.
going. So one of the some people were asking about the fact that the HUD doesn't reset itself, or it does reset itself rather, doesn't save itself properly. I think on PlayStation, possibly Xbox as well. That's a whack-a-mole problem. You know, I think I've had someone fix that bug 3 times now, so I'm going to get them to fix it a 4th time, and we'll try and get it right this time. So yeah, we'll get that one done because that's super annoying. Adam Melton asked, they're running Steam routes and getting a service failure. That's because you're running out of coal. Make sure that if you've got it set to to manual firing, if you've gone in and turned the firing to manual, then you need to occasionally open the firebox door, and that's what will cause coal to be put into the firebox. If you put it on automatic, then it'll happen automatically, and you pretty much should never see that service failure. But that message is because you're not opening the firebox door to allow coal in. It's somewhat of a pseudo process for the firing, but that's essentially the difference between manual and auto firing, and that's generally what that service failure means. Stephen Hughes, is a timetable designer possible for console? That's a really interesting question, because at the outset of it, making a timetable is kind of you could see how you could do it. It's like a spreadsheety style interface, couldn't you? The problem comes with the timetable in that in order to make a timetable work, we have to go through a process called timetable simulation, which on Trenton, for example, takes 5 hours on a very high speed machine. Which is where it's running the timetable effectively at sort of high speed, and saving all of the data as it goes. And that's what then allows you to jump to 10 a.m. and have all the trains be in the right place for 10 a.m. You can't just guess where they are because they might have interfered with each other with signals and junctions and so forth and been held up. So it has to just play the timetable, record it all out. And sometimes even the fastest timetable can take an hour to simulate, if it's a really, even if, as long as it's more than a couple of services. So that's where things get really tricky because most consoles don't have the horsepower to do that in less than 24 hours, and that'd be time just sat there watching a progress bar very slowly going across. So timetabling is actually unlikely to come as a tool. And if anything, it more likely be more enhancements to some of the existing stuff, I think. But hey, if you've got ideas for other cool tools that you think could be put into the in-game side of things, I'm all ears. I'd like to hear about that. But no, timetabling for a number of reasons is incredibly challenging to try and put through that. And I think that's the last one that I had written down. So yeah, that's all me. That's me all done.
Okay. I have seen a couple questions of, I've seen quite a few questions of, will you do X route? Will you do this route? Story short is the same question that you always get back from us when asking this is that if it's not on our roadmap, we really don't have much to share on it. This is because we don't know what process, we don't know what part of the process of development it could be in. And it's just not at a point where we're we're ready to really talk more about it. So whether there is or whether there isn't, we're not able to share more. So if it's not on the roadmap or if it's not in our recently shown Dovetail Direct, there isn't really anything else we can really share. Not at this point. Maybe next month there will be more. There was a mention of when is next month's roadmap. So again, early March. We're kind of penciling in March 5th if you want an exact date. But again, you can just kind of follow us on the forums to be sure of that. And I know there's a lot of more questions as well. What we're going to do is we are going to end the stream up now because we could, I mean, as much as I think me and Matt would happily sit here and answer as many questions as we can, we do have evenings and we do have dinners to get to. But I think it's really important that we don't ignore the questions coming in. So what I will say is, please, if you have a question from tonight that wasn't answered, add it to our Q&A thread pinned in a general tab of our Train Sim World forums. I might actually be able to throw a link in the chat, so let me grab that for you now. And the plan is for myself, I will go around tomorrow scooping up all those questions and feeding them forward to people like Matt, to people within our development teams as well, and try and get as many answers as I can for as many of those as possible. So here is a link to that thread. I think if I cut off the Zen bit, it won't just start you at a random page. Go to that link, put your questions in that. And we hope you've kind of enjoyed a little bit of a different style of roadmap tonight. I know you've been listening to my voice and Matt's voice and not many happy pictures. We kind of just came in and said, here's what the direct has been, and we've just talked for about an hour. So, I mean, I hope you've enjoyed that kind of insight. Usually, we have our roadmaps a bit differently. So when we come back in March, it will go back to the kind of standard process we do, which is, hey, what happened last month? What's coming up this month? Is there any more content we want to talk about? And then we sometimes highlight bits from the community. Now, as much as we would have done this for this month, we've been really busy with the Dovetail Direct and all the new announcements. And I think it's important that we give them the space to really be the main point of discussion. I want to say a couple of thanks though. Thank you to the mods tonight. There were a lot of questions and you've done a lot of really great work helping us pass forward answers. I know some people have jumped in late to the stream and maybe missed a question or two. One little bit of advice. If you come back to this very stream on our YouTube channel, tomorrow, maybe tomorrow afternoon. What I do in the mornings is I timestamp where all of the questions were for tonight. So if there was a question that you weren't sure whether it was answered or not, and you don't know if you used the forums or not, this video should be timestamped as well. So it's good to see that a couple people kind of prefer this type of update. Maybe we will dive into some more Q&A style streams because it's fun to just get into the nitty gritty. And it's also important to share generally where we are at Dovetail and what our status is on various different updates. That's enough talking, I think, for tonight. I think you've heard enough of my voice. So that's pretty much going to be it. So again, our next roadmap will be early March. In terms of all of our announcements from the Dovetail Direct, I'll say this one last time for everyone tonight. We've not really got much information to share. We talked a little bit earlier about Overground and Rosenheim in terms of layers and what they have included on them. And we've also mentioned a little bit about what you can expect first, and that will be Bahnstrecke Rosenheim to Salzburg. That will likely be the next release. We will have more information very soon. Someone did ask, when does very soon mean? Very soon means we're not happy to commit to a date yet, because if we give you a date and it changes, we don't, you know, then we've gone back on our word. Very soon means just keep your eye on update notes
soon.
and announcements. Yeah, soon and soon. And that's it. Matt, you've done excellent tonight, so thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it. I've been really enjoying the questions, actually. Thank you for the questions, folks.
And yes, actually, good point. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. I appreciate your time tonight, and that'll do us. So my headset is slipping off slowly, and it's
go fill in the survey.
Yes, the survey. Do the survey. Go win yourself a key. And we'll be back next month for more roadmap updates. But in the meantime, that's it. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.